Welcome to the Cocktail Guru Podcast,
a show about food, drink, and entertainment,
with a tight focus on the good life,
and all things delicious, luxurious, and fun.
I'm Jonathan Pogash, bartender, author, TV personality, and founder of the Cocktail Guru.
And I'm Jeffrey Pogash, wine and spirits professional, author, insatiable collector of culinary ephemera, and so people tell me, an engaging raconteur.
And my dad. Well, Dad, I decided not to do a tiki shirt today. Can you see that?
You know what? I just noticed, and I'm rather bewildered by that.
It's
decision on your part.
I feel it's chilly outside. I feel like I don't know the tiki thing. It just wasn't really calling me this morning.
The weather is definitely turning out here. It's a very brisk and windy and raw kind of day. That's why I wore this shirt.
Okay.
Because this shirt reminds me of fun in the sun.
Well, okay.
And it's
that's good.
Flowery, all things that grow into beautiful, bushy flowers.
Okay. Well, Dad,
shrubbery. That's what this shirt is all about.
I'm just drinking soda water. I'm taking a little break here. But what do you have an actual cocktail that you're drinking, right?
Well, boy, this is a strange day for you, John, between your shirt and
I know, right.
seltzer water. Okay, I, true to form, I have a cocktail. Well, I have a drink anyway. Technically, it's probably not a cocktail, but I threw some cherry herring and some, believe it or not, this is a weird combination, but it works. Some Highland Park single malt Scotch whiskey. Yeah, and I topped it off with some seltzer just to lighten it up a little bit.
A little
it's
Scotch.
Like a
cherry Scotch highball. Cherry Scotch highball.
Like a highball or like a punch or something like that. And it's delicious.
Well, our guest is very anxious to come on because she obviously likes the drink that you're drinking. She's giving us the thumbs up. And our guest today is from a place we all know well and that we love. And I met her there. We both met her there this past July at Tales of the Cocktail. I did an amazing seminar with her, moderated by the wonderful Tiffany Barriere, who we had on as a guest in season 1. And Tiffany's a sometimes member of the Cocktail Guru team. Our guest comes from New Orleans, the magical land of cocktails, mystery, and adventure. Wow. Who wrote this script? The magical land of cocktails, mystery, and adventure. Okay, sure, I'll go with it. She's known for creating cocktails that change color, smoke, sparkle, all kinds of magical things. She has a New Orleans-based company called Pretty Magic Cocktails, offering in-person and virtual cocktail classes, spirits tastings, and more. We're very excited to bring on our next guest, and we will do so in just a moment. We're going to take a quick break. If you're into swag as much as we are, then look no further than our Cocktail Guru shop. The items in our store have been personally chosen with care by me, Jonathan, and my team of Cocktail Gurus. A water bottle with a stainless steel straw. We've got that. T-shirts. Hoodies, snapback hats, signed copies of Mr. Boston Bartender's Guide, cocktail box kits, bar tools, more. Way more. You bet. We've even managed to create a onesie for that mocktail lover in your family. Head on over to shop.thecocktailguru.com and use code GURU22 for 10% off your first order. That's shop.thecocktailguru.com, 10% off with code GURU22. Cheers. And we're back. Our guest, J'Nai Angelle, welcome.
Welcome, J'Nai Angelle. Welcome. And I must say, she is pretty and she is magical.
Oh, thank you.
Yes.
Try to, embody myself in everything that I put out in the world.
Well, what is that? Well, I mean, you talk a lot about that too, in person and through your social media. What exactly does that mean? Kind of putting out what you are and what you do.
I think when you are not a celebrity, because I wouldn't consider myself celebrity status, but someone who puts out information or your personality just into the world, you present yourself to the world. I feel like you have to be at least a certain amount of yourself. When I create things, I try to create it in a way that people can genuinely get to know me. I feel like when I was thinking of a name for my company, the thing that always stood out to me was when when I was working at bars, we would try to incorporate every type of spirit or every type of base spirit into our new menu. So like vodka, tequila, whiskey, gin, we wanted each of the cocktails. And then I would always go last because I would say, I can make magic out of anything. Just give me what everybody doesn't want. And if you need a vodka cocktail, I can make a vodka cocktail. No problem. I'll put my little magic on it. And then, pretty magic just came to me one day.
Yeah, I mean that's really interesting because I kind of feel the same way. I mean, I try to make great things out of things maybe that people can't necessarily see the greatness of yet, and really it's putting your signature touch on it that brings that personality of the cocktail through via you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
That's awesome. And, we've been admiring your work for quite some time. And what I love is I think with what you do, you're bringing spirits education to people who may not necessarily have access to it. So they're having access to it in many different ways. What kind of stemmed your interest in spirits?
I think it all started with me just being I'm just the type of person who likes to know everything about everything. So when I was in college, I was actually pre-dental, and I took a lot of prerequisite science classes. One of my favorite, and I think it was partly because of the teacher, was microbiology. And she introduced us to a quote that said, "Chance favors the prepared mind," which is by Louis Pasteur, who created pasteurization. Mm-hmm. And when I heard that, I was like, it was really life-changing because like, that's so true. Like if you prepare yourself for everything, you'll be ready for anything. So I took that approach when it came to cocktails and spirits education. Once I finally started working in the cocktail world, I wanted to know all of the cocktails. And then once I knew all of the cocktails, I realized that I had to know, in order to explain them correctly and also make them correctly, I had to understand the spirits in them and, modifiers and all of those things. And it's been a journey.
You're a humanist. You're a humanist and a Renaissance woman. And I admire that because I too was involved in things like philosophy and anthropology and music when I was in college.
Yeah, absolutely. But that's where it started. And then I realized that customers really don't know anything about cocktails and spirits other than what you see on TV or, popular cocktails that you drink in college. Mm-hmm. People don't really know that. So in order to really teach them about it, you have to equip yourself with the knowledge to explain that correctly. So that was really the reason that I really kind of like embodied the role of educator, is because I need to know this so that I can correctly explain to the world and we can all be better educated drinkers.
And you offer both in-person and online classes, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. And I definitely incorporate some type of educational element into all my classes.
And my dad is quite the educator as well. That's where you started, Dad. You started educating folks in wine when, Alsatian wines from Alsace, when nobody knew where the hell Alsace ever was.
Right. I was forced to be an educator because of the area that I was representing at the time, which nobody knew about. So I had to become an educator.
And, this is interesting. I'd like to know, actually, well, I'm interviewing J'Nai and my dad right now. J'Nai, what are some tips that you could give to other educators with, based on your experience?
I would say you're not always right. We forget things. And I think a lot of people forget to kind of like admit when they're wrong. Definitely admit when you're wrong. Always stay learning. If I'm not in one certification program, I'm in another, or I'm reading a book. I'm always trying to find ways to educate myself daily. And I think be open-minded, because you can learn from the the least likely of places. I learned from people who rarely drink cocktails. Some people will study spirits that I haven't yet kind of explored, and they'll teach me things, and it'll come from the most like wildest of sources.
Yep, absolutely. That's one thing I learned too. You can learn from all experiences, and the people that you meet, you have to treat with respect and reverence, because you never know what you're going to learn from that individual, as unlikely a person that might be. In your opinion, when you first meet, it might be somebody who gives you a great education along the way.
Yeah, I always learned, never stop learning. I mean, all of the great educators have said that. I was mentored by Gary Regan, who always said that. Dale DeGroff, Dave Wondrich, all of the big timers, they always say that. You never stop learning. And whenever I do trainings, I always let everybody know, hey, first of all, guys, I never claim to know everything. You can ask the questions. I'll tell you I'll give you an answer if I know it. But there are times when I'm doing a training and there's a super geeky question out there from a younger bartender, half my age, and I'm like, I don't know. I can look it up for you later, or I can steer you in the direction of the person who might know that. But I don't know. I don't know what type of stainless steel is used in the tools to take down the espadín mezcals. I don't know, whatever. I just made that up, but
yeah. They're always really technical like that too.
Oh, totally.
Like really.
Totally. Is it?
I remember someone asked me why I decided to use lemon instead of lime in a cocktail, and it totally tripped me out. I'm like, well, the cocktail recipe that I kind of use as a template use lime, so that's why I use lime. But if you think about it, and then I went on a total tangent, and I'm like, I hope that sounds right.
Yeah.
Because bartender brains they don't always work the same as consumer brains. We think of cocktail ingredients a lot differently. And I think one of the things that I do is try to explain that in kind of like a palatable way.
Yeah. I mean, for instance, for the lemon lime argument, one of the things I might say is, well, we can experiment, and then if you experiment, then you can personally taste the difference between one made with lime, one made with lemon, because you start with the basic template, like you said, let's say a gin gimlet, right? Gin, lime juice, simple syrup. You have it's a gimlet, but if you swap out, and add lemon, then it's a gin sour, and you have two completely different types of drinks, two different flavor profiles. But it's very interesting to think in those terms.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and I'm definitely part of that lemon lime controversy, because I love to use lime in my Bloody Marys instead of lemon. I mean, I think a lot of people, most places, use lemon.
Yeah, that's absolutely a standard in New Orleans.
Yeah, I'm definitely a lime person when it comes to the Bloody Mary. So now in New Orleans, Creole cuisine is so important. And it's a staple. It's the foundation of cuisine in Louisiana. And how has that influenced your cocktails? Because I know you worked for a restaurant group called Creole Restaurant Concepts.
Yeah,
and you must have learned quite a bit. A lot of Creole cuisine must have rubbed off on you and influenced the way in which you make cocktails. Perhaps.
I believe I would say it was more of the people who were employed there rather than the overall company. Corporate companies are funny, and I think that's something that a lot of consumers don't realize, is that bartending can be very corporate when you're working in restaurant groups or hotel groups. You have to follow a lot of kind of like overarching rules. So it kind of limits the ability of you to learn. But if you are, following your dreams with reckless abandon, nobody's going to stop you from learning. And I think the people that I found myself around in certain points of my career were kind of in the same mind. They were really wanting to learn about cocktails, and it was a collaborative effort. And I'm grateful for the people that I was able to work with that taught me about cocktails and also inspired me to learn more about cocktails. I remember the Creole cuisine restaurant that I did work at was called Kingfish, which was started by Chris McMillan, who then left to open his own bar. So unfortunately, I didn't work with him there. But he had left such a mark on the bartenders that still existed in that space. And you could definitely tell. And they were just such pros in their own right that it inspired me to become the same thing. And I would, pick up things here and there from them when I could, while also just learning independently about cocktails and spirits. And then I'd, pick up my own tricks by learning the tricks that they had. So it was definitely kind of feeding off of them. And it's really good to have that kind of environment. In terms of Creole cuisine, I would say I'm mostly inspired just by my childhood. A lot of the cocktails that I do create tend to be off of experiences or flavor profiles. I actually created a cocktail called a crawfish boil on a Saturday, and it was a cocktail that incorporated Creole seasoning as well as crab and seafood boil, which was really interesting. And I think that's part of my heritage. I'm always trying to put some salt or some type of spice in a cocktail. So I would say that's the most lasting effect of Creole cuisine, is that almost everything that I make is a little bit spicy, just a tad.
Good. Do you use cayenne pepper at all?
Ooh, no, not by itself normally. I do like to use seasoned salts for rims, and just sometimes I'll make tinctures with them as well. I am a big proprietor of using like a Cajun seasoned salt tincture to spicing up margaritas and Bloody Marys instead of jalapenos. I feel like it just creates a whole different flavor with a little bit of ginger, a little bit of onion sometimes.
We forgot to ask you a question, J'Nai. We always ask our guests at the beginning, but we just got right into the conversation, so we forgot. J'Nai, what is your desert island drink?
Ooh, the one that I would drink forever, I would say it would definitely be a whiskey-based cocktail, something with Scotch probably. I would say maybe a penicillin or something penicillin-like.
Yeah.
I think that's where, if I were to say something that was all-encompassing, or the number one cocktail that kind of encompassed a lot of the flavors that I enjoy, it would be a penicillin. So something a little bit peated. I like ginger, love ginger.
Yeah.
A little bit of lemon.
Dad loves peated whiskeys.
I'm giving you the high sign here because I love peated whiskeys and I love ginger. So
yeah,
those are great.
I'm probably a penicillin.
Those are great flavors, and we're going to continue the conversation in just a bit. Attention bartenders, at home or in a bar. Marie Brizard makes an all-natural line of liqueurs fit for kings and queens. Speaking of royalty, their Chocolate Royale is perfect in cocktails as well as on its own. With so few chocolate liqueur options out there, you can't beat this scrumptious spirit for all your chocolate liqueur needs. So let's raise a glass to Marie Brizard and a heritage that dates back to 1755. Santé! And we're back, continuing our conversation. We were just talking about ginger and peated whiskey. Oh my gosh, those flavors are really quite magical.
Yeah,
indeed.
I totally agree.
So the spirit classes that you do, is there anything happening? I mean, is there anything that you're really into these days when it comes to, spirits? I mean, you were just talking about smoky Scotch whiskey. Is there anything that you're kind of focused on that you're just really a fan of right this moment?
Yeah, so I'm actually taking a wine class. As a cocktail bartender, my wine knowledge is a little lacking. So I'd like to start learning so I can start educating on that as well, because it's a whole different world. And for me, it's a little harder to understand because with like regular spirits, for example, whiskey, it's made from grains. And, the whiskey that you had in 2010 probably taste like the whiskey that you had in 2013. But with wine, it can change within a year. And you also have to know about regionality, type of grape, to really understand the flavors that you're looking for and what you're actually tasting. So I am really interested in learning more about that, incorporating in cocktails, and trying to word it into ways that the public can understand.
Well, if you're wanting a great book that is not available anymore, and you probably can't find it anywhere because they haven't made it in about 30 years, but or 40 years. But Dad's book, How to Read a Wine Label, was published in the 70s. Yeah, Dad.
You're too kind, John. You're too kind.
It's not available, or is it available for like 32 cents on eBay or something? Is that?
It's available for a couple of bucks on Amazon.
Oh, there you go.
You can look it up on Amazon and sometimes eBay.
How to read a wine label. And so that's really interesting, J'Nai, is coming from the cocktail side, I think I felt the same way working in bars. My wine education, even though I grew up in the wine business because that's what Dad was doing my entire childhood, my wine education was really lacking, and is still lacking, which is why I have Dad to do the wine education part. But it's always great to have that well-rounded education.
But both disciplines are complex. But I studied and had my entire 20-year first career in the wine industry, and I think it was maybe a little easier for me to jump into the spirits and cocktail field, not the cocktail, but the spirits field, as opposed to starting out with cocktails and then going into wine, because wine can be very complex. For the reasons you just said, because vintages change, the styles change, and there's so many different wineries and so many different vineyards around that it's hard to keep track of them all.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And what is the Learning Laboratory?
Oh, so the Learning Laboratory is actually a nonprofit that I volunteered for a few years ago. It was focused on STEM, basically exposing Black and brown kids in poor neighborhoods to quality STEM education. So it was a 6-week summer experience, and the kids would show up and do various kind of like math and science activities, and I was a counselor for it, and it was really fun.
That's awesome. Giving back to the community.
Mm-hmm. That was actually my first foray into social media, because I ran the social media for that program for a little bit.
Yeah, so that's a great transition. So tell us how social media kind of changed your business, your life in a way.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really funny because before the pandemic even happened, I was working at a restaurant, and I was reminiscing on how I really hated the music and how I would enjoy my job a lot better if the music was a lot better. And I was also just thinking about how much, there were so many cocktails that people who looked like me didn't know about. They would always, when I would get African-American customers, they would always order the same things. And it was really disheartening to me because there's so much that they could learn. And I thought if I could incorporate music and cocktails together in some form, then I could really, teach the masses. So I remember very vividly telling my the line cook at the time, I want to make videos of myself dancing to cocktail videos, or like making cocktails on Instagram. And they gave me the driest kind of like, okay, you don't do that.
Right, you do that and let me know how that works.
2-3 years later, I'm doing it all the time now. But yeah, that was the first time I ever had the idea. Then fast forward to quarantine, and I get bored and I make the video that I had been wanting to make for months, and people really enjoyed it. I think I shared it on Facebook, just kind of like, I was bored, I just made this thing, and people were like, oh my God, I love that, make more. So that's when I started doing that. And then after I started doing that, brands started reaching out to me and being like, hey, can you make another one with our stuff?
Great.
I'm like, sure.
Well, that's great, because you're monetizing it essentially during a time when everybody was out of work.
Yeah, absolutely. But right before the pandemic, I had actually quit the job I was discussing because I wanted to start my own business. I love bartending as a job, but I always saw the industry as something to kind of like use to create my own space. So I was going to try to do mobile bartending. I was going to, quit one job. I had two at the time. Quit one job, work on my mobile bartending, and use the other one to pay my bills while I worked on my business. But that kind of morphed along with me kind of like growing my social media and realizing who my audience actually was. It grew into more of an educational space for me. So instead of doing mobile bartending and working events, I decided that maybe I could actually create my own events and that people would come to learn instead of just be entertained. I realized that when I kind of sat down and was like, okay, are we just making cocktail videos for fun, or do we want to do this to kind of create a community? And once I made that decision, I had to start thinking strategically about the types of videos I made. So instead of just me dancing around on TikTok and Instagram teaching people about cocktails, I started making videos about debunking cocktail culture myths or myths that people thought about spirits, like gluten-free spirits aren't a thing, or, that I had just talking about those things in general and basically telling people these are the things that marketing and the internet's told you, but this is what it actually is. And then I realized that people actually like those. So then I started doing more talking videos rather than just, entertaining cocktail videos. And people are actually really learning a lot from my content. And it's actually creating a community of people who come to me to learn and then support my business to learn more.
That's fantastic. Incredible. And tell us a little bit about your classes, the ones that are available in person and online through Zoom, I would imagine. Is that
Yeah,
right?
absolutely. So I've been doing, yes, through Zoom. I've been doing a lot of virtual classes, mainly for corporate companies and small groups. But my classes are always education focused. So the classes that I offer now are basically BYOB. You bring your own bottle of liquor, your choice for the class. So you can do a whiskey class, a gin class, an agave class, which gives you the option to bring tequila or mezcal. And then I curate a cocktail box for the season and that spirit. And then we talk about it. And then there's also an educational element. So you'll learn about whiskey cocktails in a whiskey class, but you'll also learn about what whiskey actually is. We'll discuss the different types of whiskey and how you can use that knowledge to create, a better home bar or order better cocktails at a bar.
And you also focus on cognac and brandies too, I think.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Very
Yeah, I
exciting.
also have a cocktails and trap music class that I teach
Cocktails
from time to time.
cocktails and what music?
Yes, trap music. Yeah, it was born out of a project I did with Speed Rack a couple of years ago, and it actually morphed into its own thing. I actually taught it for a focus on health, and I actually teach it during Black History Month as well. But it's basically a class centered around the intersection between cocktails and music and spirits and music. And I talk about how spirits have influenced Black history and vice versa. It's really fun. And we listen to music and make some cool drinks.
Sounds like fun. Sounds great.
And how would you say spirits have influenced life in general?
Oh gosh, life in general.
Oh, I mean, I guess not life in general, but your life, yeah.
Life in New Orleans.
Yeah. So I think it's opened doors for me. So truth be told, I started working in the cocktail space around 2017. I've been bartending for 10 years. Before that, I was just working at, sports bars, dive bars where cocktails weren't really a thing. And then I happened to walk into a bar that looked really busy, and the bartenders looked like they made a lot of money, which happened to be a cocktail bar that I got hired at. And then I was like, what is happening? I don't know what this world is. But once I got introduced to the world, it was like a door was opened. And once I found, like quality cocktails and spirits education, once I had access to that, there was no stopping me. So it's created an avenue. It's also given me the opportunity for entrepreneurship. It's given me the opportunity to travel. It's given me the opportunity to make friends. It's really changed my life into something that I never thought it was. At the time, I was really in a transitional space because I was bartending and really unhappy bartending because I didn't see a future in it. And I didn't know if I wanted to go back to school and finally become a doctor, or should I, try another job that had a better trajectory. But once I found out that there were other opportunities, through being educated and through networking and going to things like Tales of the Cocktail and conferences across the country. Once I found that out, I realized that I could actually make this a thing. And I think, it changed my life forever. I don't think I want to leave.
You worked at Compère Lapin, didn't you?
Yes. I worked at
Compère bar and restaurant. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that was a really great space for me to grow. It introduced me to the concept of selling. So that's really where my kind of educational aspect on spirits kind of grew, or my love for spirits education grew, because I had to learn how to sell all the spirits I didn't know about. Like we had, it was the first bar that I worked at that had mezcal and mezcal related spirits. So Sotol, Bacanar, Racia, we had it all. There were specialty whiskeys that I had to learn about and learn how to sell. There were people who would come in and ask me to make whiskey flights. And I'm like, how do I do that? So I had to learn how to develop spirit flights and things like that. So I definitely attribute that knowledge to that place.
And so this conversation just flew by, and we want to speak to you as long as we possibly can, really. But one question that I had that I think is a good way to kind of leave our listeners and viewers is, what advice would you have for the young bartender wanting to educate themselves and learn from people like you?
I would absolutely start with books first. I would say, don't be discouraged by how much information there is about it. Start simple. Learn, basic cocktails, learn basic spirits, and start from there. Find a mentor if you can, for sure. Bartending is very much a job where you can grow as you go. So learn a little. What I like to do is, people are always asking questions. Every day that I walk into the bar, people are going to ask me something. And there's probably going to be a chance that I'm going to say, I don't know, to one of those questions. So what I do is I write down all the questions I said I don't know to, and make sure that the next day I know the answer to them. So very much learn as you go. Try to keep a positive attitude and a mindset, but I feel like, that's a no-brainer. But bartending can be a really difficult job mentally and physically. So make sure that you're taking care of yourself outside of work. Also have a hobby outside of work that doesn't involve bartending in any aspect, or your coworkers.
Right.
Make sure you have a life outside of work.
Have a life and friends outside of the industry.
Yes, it's very essential.
That's great. That's all great advice. And I wish I had that advice when I was much, much younger. But you're amazing, J'Nai. You're a delight. And it's always great to see you and to be able to chat with you.
Same. Thank you for having me. This was great.
Thank you, J'Nai. And don't forget, laissez le bon temps rouler.
Yes. Let the good times roll.
He had to slip that one in. Had to do it. Thanks, J'Nai.
You're welcome. Thank you so much.
Take care, J'Nai. Tipple Time is brought to you in part by Monin Premium Gourmet Syrups and Glenmorangie.
Welcome to another edition of Tipple Time with Jonathan Pogash on the Cocktail Guru podcast. Today I'm going to do a variation on an old fashioned, which is one of my favorite cocktails. You hear me say that often. Guys, my favorite cocktail this, my favorite cocktail this. No, but seriously, this is one of my favorite cocktails. Without further ado, I would like to make it for you. It starts off with a single malt Scotch whiskey called Glenmorangie, which is delightful. They have a brand new packaging, brand new bottling. This is their Glenmorangie X, which says on the bottle, made for mixing. So I'm going to take their advice and I'm going to use it for mixing. So first of all, I've got my mixing glass, beautiful, lovely crystal mixing glass, and my jigger. We're going to measure out 2.5 ounces of Glenmorangie X. And we'll add our sweetening agent, which of course, old fashions traditionally have some kind of a sweetening agent. Sometimes Demerara sugar, sometimes simple syrup, sometimes maple syrup. This is pomegranate syrup. Ooh, from Monin. They make these delicious, all-natural, fruit-flavored syrups, perfect for cocktails and non-alcoholic drinks, teas, lemonades. And this is great for the season 2 pomegranate, right? And of course, bitters, which are right over here. Oh, excuse me. Oh, leaned over. So as you can see, I'm actually, well, for those of you watching the YouTube show, I'm at a real bar. And for those of you just listening, you could just imagine what a real bar looks like as I'm making this drink. I have some chocolate bitters that I'm going to add. 3 dashes, 1, 2, 3, just like that. Put that to the side, and now I will add my ice. Fill it up with ice about halfway, and stir. So when I stir, I basically double the time that I would for shaking. So shaking, I like to say 8 Mississippis. Stirring about 16 Mississippis. And we're probably just about there. Okay. And I will add my Hawthorne strainer on top. And then I've got this beautiful glass. Look at that ice cube. Isn't that gorge? Big rock. We'll just strain it right out into the glass. Ooh. That is lovely. And instead of an orange peel or a cherry, I'm actually going to do a lemon peel. Because I think pomegranate works well with orange as well, but this drink in particular works really well with the lemon peel. And we'll just squeeze it right over the top of the drink, rub it around the rim, drop it in. We'll give it a little sample. I get that fresh lemon zest right off the bat. So good. Oh. Glenmorangie X, made for mixing. They are not lying, folks. It is definitely made for mixing. And that Monin pomegranate works so well with the Scotch whiskey, and the bitters. It's delicious. Cheers to another beautiful drink on Tipple Time with the Cocktail Guru podcast.
Tipple Time is brought to you in part by Glenmorangie and Monin Premium Gourmet Syrups. That does it for today's show. If you enjoy what we do, please rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast. You can also support the show with a small monthly donation to help sustain future episodes. Just click on the donate button at the top of our website and choose your donation amount. To learn more about our guests, visit www.thecocktailgurupodcast.com or follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, or TikTok.
The Cocktail Guru podcast is produced by First Reel Entertainment and distributed by EatsDrinksTV, a service of the Center for Culinary Culture, home of the Cocktail Collection, and is available via Anchor, Spotify, Apple, Google, Amazon, and wherever you listen to your favorite shows.